Hey, welcome to the Lead Up Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Harbour. I'm really excited to be with you today. It's been a little while since I've done a solo podcast. We've had some unbelievable interviews with great guests the last few weeks. Last week, we heard from Scott Becker. The week before that, Tom Dahlberg. All things healthcare and leadership. We've got more CEOs coming up on the Lead Up Podcast to talk about how they're transforming their cultures and retaining employees, attracting the right talent to their organization. So I want to challenge you to continue to tune in. Look, the Lead Up Podcast is a place where we challenge leaders to think differently, to really look at their choices differently, the choices they make, the systems they build, the cultures they shape. This is where our choices come in as leaders. Today's episode is about a silent killer, not market forces. We can talk about the market, the economy, the world, politics, everything that's going on today. This is not about market forces. It's not about technology. It's not even about resistance to change. It's something far more subtle than that, and quite frankly, far more dangerous. It's what happens when leaders believe alignment exists, but it doesn't. The image driving today's conversation maps a pattern that I've seen repeatedly inside organizations that genuinely want to change, yet still continue to fail. We've been doing this for years and years in the healthcare space, not because they lack vision or funding or intent, but because alignment stopped at words and never reached behavior. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most transformations don't fail loudly. They fail quietly, month by month, meeting by meeting. So today we're going to talk about 4 dangers you need to know about the silent killer of transformation and why your good intentions aren't enough. So I hope you're ready. Grab a pen and paper. Get ready to take some notes. Let's walk through this leadership failure in stages. I'm going to call this stage 1, January. Hey, when I'm recording this, it's middle of April. We're in the second quarter of 2026. Let's go back to January because I'm going to help you reflect a little bit and diagnose and see if you've got some of these symptoms here that we're going to talk about. In January, we had verbal alignment. Leadership agrees on strategy, meetings sign off, surface level unity has happened. This is where transformation feels successful. I know I recently had this very conversation with my team when we did planning for the end of the year. We've had a very successful first quarter, but where are we at? Are we aligned? Are we executing on the things that we said we were going to execute on? The offsite went well. Maybe you brought your team together and talked about strategy and the things that you wanted to move forward. The slides were polished. You presented very well. You created excitement, and everybody nodded. And if you're watching me on YouTube right now, you see me nodding. Everybody nodded at the right moments. Here's the reality, and I often teach this in leadership training. People are nodding yes, but the reality is they don't know. They don't have clarity. They have no idea where we're going. The reality for you as a leader is verbal alignment is not a real alignment. It's just agreement in the room. Let me share a little research with you. According to McKinsey, 70% of change initiatives fail. And one of the top causes is misalignment between leadership intent and day-to-day execution. Harvard Business Review found that only 20% of strategic targets set by organizations are realized, largely due to poor alignment and communication. What's happening here? Leaders are agreeing on language, but not meaning, not execution. Every executive leaves the room carrying a slightly different definition of success, of priority, of urgency, of trade-offs that have to happen in order to achieve one goal where we have to sacrifice or let go of something else. And those differences don't show up in January. They show up later when decisions get hard. Patrick Lencioni said this: the greatest illusion of leadership is believing agreement equals commitment. So a question for you. Did we align on words or on behaviors? When you have that meeting, when you have your regular meetings, do you align on words or do you align on behaviors? Look, at Harbour Resources, one of the things that we're passionate about and we help organizations do is align on behaviors that are needed to change. This being that we have to become. What are the behaviors we have to attack and change in order to execute on the words that we say are important, on the vision, on the goals. Here's a second question for you. What will we say no to because of this strategy? Are you asking that question in these meetings? What do we need to say no to? What do we need to let go of? What do we need to sacrifice? See, oftentimes leaders want to continue to hang on to things that feel good, pet projects, things we started that are failing, but we're afraid to let go of them. And they're not really waiting. They're not really waiting or moving things forward. So this is the setup for you as a leader to understand. Okay. Segment 2 or stage 2 is the hidden reality. Different definitions of success. We have different definitions of success. We have conflicting priorities, divergent ideas on ideas. CEO sees one thing, the chief nurse sees another, the director of strategy sees another. This is the stage leaders rarely see because it's invisible at the top. Executives believe alignment exists because no one is openly disagreeing. But silence is not consensus. It's often avoidance. A Gartner study found that 50% of leaders believe their organization is aligned, while only 15% of employees agree with this. An MIT Sloan research study shows that misaligned leadership teams reduce transformation success by up to 67%. Can you afford that? The margins are so small today in healthcare leadership. Can you afford this misalignment? Why does this happen? Because leaders optimize their function instead of the enterprise. Sales push growth, marketing pushes growth, operation pushes stability, finance pushes cost control, HR pushes engagement. All of these are reasonable things to fight for, but they're all conflicting if we haven't created a strategy around them. And when those tensions aren't explicitly resolved, they get pushed downward. Edgar Schein says culture is the sum of all the conversations leaders avoid, not the ones we have, but the ones that we avoid. And we have to know that as a leader. So here's a couple of questions for you. Where are you tolerating ambiguity because clarity feels uncomfortable? And what conflicts are we postponing instead of resolving right now to move forward? So that's stage 2. Here's stage 3. This is the second danger that we must be aware of. So we're into March. Cast this vision in January at the top. Now we're into March. We're 3 months in, 2+ months in to where we're at. I want to see if some of this feels like where you are right now as a leader. Middle management confusion, unclear priorities, mixed messages from the top, siloed execution. This is what middle management confusion looks like. You think there's clarity, but really there's unclear priorities on the front lines. There's mixed messages from the top. One executive says one thing, another executive says another, the board is saying something else. And then everybody begins to operate in these silos to protect themselves. And this is where good strategy begins to unravel. Middle managers are the translation layer of transformation. When leaders aren't aligned, managers are forced to interpret and make up their own truth, make up their own direction. And then this interpretation may breed inconsistency. Here's what Gallup says. Gallup reports that 22% of employees strongly agree that their leaders set clear direction. Only 22%. Prosky research shows projects with effective sponsorship are 3 times more likely to fail. Without effective sponsorship, with ineffective sponsorship, they're 3 times more likely to fail. So what do managers do? They hedge, they wait, they protect their teams, they protect their turf, they prioritize what they're measured on, not what was said in the town hall, not because they're resisting, but because clarity never arrived. So they're confused, they're stuck, they don't know which direction to go. When leaders are unclear, managers become cautious. Caution kills momentum. Couple of questions for you. What trade-offs have we explicitly clarified for managers? And then what signals are our incentive sending, spoken or unspoken. See, we drive organizations by incentives, but are we saying, hey, to get this? I read a report just recently that there's an organization, organization, management organization, owns hospitals, manages hospitals. 60% of the CEO's income, pay, is based on results. And so if the CEO, if 60% of that income is based on results, what are they going to focus on? They're going to focus on results, like driving the bottom line. Maybe not patient safety, maybe not employee engagement, maybe not the things that really matter long term to drive the success in healthcare. As leaders, we've got to get real about this. What message, what signals are we truly sending? So now let's move into June. Let's fast forward a little bit. We begin to see frontline workarounds. They're building their own solutions. They're ignoring new processes. There's resistance and chaos. So by June, the system begins to adapt. Not in the way leaders intended. They're not doing the things that you as the leader wanted. Frontline teams don't resist change out of stubbornness. They resist when change makes their work harder or slower or less safe, especially in healthcare. So what they do is they begin to create workarounds to stay safe or to get things done in a timely manner so they can get home at a decent hour. Bain and Company found that frontline disengagement accounts for up to 30% of productivity loss during poorly executed transformations. Deloitte reports that 73% of employees say they don't understand how change impacts their daily work. Are you aware of this as a leader? Senior leader. I'm speaking of senior leaders here. If you're a frontline leader, you need to know this and work on communicating up and down. So workarounds are a signal, not a failure of discipline. We often, as leaders, we blame the people. We blame our team. They're lazy. They don't want to work hard. They just want their paycheck. But this is a signal for us as a leader. Leadership is about influence, but in order to influence, we've got to get in the dirt with them and find out what's going on, understand the signals within the organization. These signals tell us that processes weren't co-designed, leaders didn't listen enough, and reality wasn't tested early. People don't resist change. They resist being changed without being considered. I mean, think about yourself. Do you like change? Most people want to ask that, well, yeah, I like change. Look, change is faster today. The reality is most people don't like change unless it's their change. And when you're not considered, you're going to resist if it's not your idea, if you weren't involved in direction. Here's a couple questions for you as a leader. Where are the people adapting around the system instead of within it? And then what feedback did we ignore because it was inconvenient? Where do we shut people down? We've got organizations that say innovation is one of their values, yet they shut ideas and innovation down. They don't listen to feedback from the people that matter most on the front lines. Section 5, stage 5, transformation failure. This is your fall. The promised benefits were unrealized. We've wasted resources. Employee disengagement is high. Stagnant. Their strategy is stagnant. We're not moving forward. This is the outcome no one planned for, but many quietly accept. Budgets were spent. Energy was consumed. Trust was eroded. You're a senior leader, CEO. You're in trouble if you're here. You got to get engaged in this sooner rather than later. PwC reports that only 2.5% of organizations successfully complete transformative initiatives. And Gallup shows disengaged teams cost organizations $8.8 trillion with a T globally in lost productivity. How much of that is yours in your organization? Here's the most dangerous part. Organizations normalize failure. They blame execution. They blame people. They blame the team. They move on to the next initiative without fixing the leadership system that caused the breakdown in the first place. This is where Harbour Resources and my team come alongside of you and help you install leadership systems, not a new initiative, a new system of behavior that drive the behavior of other people so that we can execute at a high level in the organization. Edward Deming said many years ago, every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. I always use our diet as an example of this. It's a system. We want to lose weight. We want to be in better shape, but the system we've designed is getting us the results that we're getting. You can apply that same wisdom to any result that you're getting in your leadership. What's the system behind it? I talk to my team about this frequently. Have we implemented a system to get the result that we're after? And usually when we're not getting the results that we're after, it's because either we haven't fully installed the system or we failed to use the system that we did install. We got to get back to it. Here's 2 questions for you as a leader. What patterns keep repeating across your initiatives? And then what leadership behaviors are you unwilling to confront? You can't be unwilling to confront behaviors that aren't moving you closer to the strategic initiatives, the goals, the transformation that you're after. Here's a real question for you, the listeners listening today. Are you aligned or are you just agreeing? I work with leaders and executive teams all the time on this issue right here. Are we having meetings that feel good and we talk about big ideas, but we never commit to what each one of us is going to do and execute between now and the next meeting? Are we just agreeing, yeah, those are good ideas, and then we'll walk out and we think, oh, who's got that? Who's carrying the ball? And we're waiting on someone else to do it. Look, transformation doesn't fail because leaders don't care. It fails because alignment never moves from intent to behavior. We're not judged by our intention. We're judged by our actions, our behavior. So our intent has to move to behavior, from words to decisions, from strategy to trade-off. At the Leap here on our Lead Up podcast and at Harbour Resources, we believe leadership isn't proven by what you announce, but by what you consistently reinforce, measure, model, and execute on. If this episode challenged you, that's the point. It's what I want to do, is challenge you to think differently so that you can execute differently and succeed differently this year than you have in the past. Because the future of healthcare leadership, the future of your leadership, doesn't belong to leaders with the best intentions. It belongs to leaders who are brave enough to confront misalignment early. Hey, I hope you benefited from today's episode. Hope you'll continue to come back. Send this upstream. If you're a mid-level leader, send this upstream to your executive team. If you're a mid-level leader and you're leading people below you and you're not creating this sort of clarity within your team, shoot me an email. I'll provide some resources, some free tools for you to think about how you can create execution downstream as well. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Lead Up podcast. It's always a pleasure to teach. It's always a pleasure to have you listen. I hope you'll bring a team back with you next time. Listen to some of our great episodes that we're having, our interviews this time, just learning from other leaders in the marketplace. They're doing things and transforming their organizations and cultures at a high level. Hey, until next time, continue to lead up, continue to lead out, continue to look forward. We'll see you on the next episode of the Lead Up podcast.